I'm Bob Baker with Jazz Guitar today, and we're here with, I don't know how to put this. We're here with jazz guitar royalty. I mean,
Well,
you have you've been around this scene for a long time, highly respected by everybody, and we're thrilled to have you, man. We're really thrilled to have you.
well, I'm thrilled to be here talking to you. Thank you. That's
The
very kind.
just I mean, everybody knows who Howard Alden is. If you played jazz guitar, you play an archtop guitar, everybody knows who you are. We're not going to go into your history. We could talk about your relationship with George Van Epps and Joe Pass and Herb and the whole. I mean, you've been there. You've been there with these guys, and
Don't
it's
forget Bucky Pizzarelli.
now don't forget Bucky. Yeah, there's some great video of you. There's some great video of you and Bucky, playing together on YouTube, and you got a lot of YouTube stuff for people to check out. But this magazine is dedicated to today, jazz guitar today. So let's catch up with you, Howard. What are you doing these days? What's going on with you?
Well, things have been a little slow the last 2 years, believe it or not.
Yeah, I haven't
I'm,
heard
uh,
that before.
I'm not
Really?
sure why, but everything just stopped like in March of 2020.
Yeah. Gee, I haven't heard anything about that at all. So
Yeah,
I
it just
guess
it must be something I said or did or something. But
it must
but
be.
things are starting to pick up again. No, I've been living in Phoenix, Arizona for about 7 years, and for the first five of those 7 years, I was still traveling about two-thirds of the year and going
Right.
various places. And then I stayed here for 2 years, and I made my first overseas trip last month to
Really?
Spain for 2 weeks. I got there back successfully, and had a wonderful 2 weeks of music, and everything seems to be waking up on the musical front.
Over in Spain, you
Yeah.
were over there. So what kind of a gig was that? I mean, was it
Well, it was a small swing band. A Spanish tenor player who called me to come and play with a little international all-star band for some dates in a couple of clubs and some festivals and small theater venues. So it was mostly in the east coast of Spain, Valencia area, and up near Barcelona for a couple of days, and up to the south of France for one day, and then back to Madrid and on the airplane home. And arrived home unscathed and had a great time. It was really encouraging to be playing to fully packed clubs. Spain is still being very cautious, so everybody in the clubs still was masking up and being very considerate, but they were enjoying the music, and it was great.
that's fantastic. So what else you got coming up? You got much more?
Well, this weekend I'm going to New Orleans for the Jazz and Heritage Festival. I'm playing with the Newport All Stars, which is a group I played with off and on for the last 30 years. And we're celebrating George Wein, who just passed away last year. He's the guy who started the Newport Jazz Festival back in 1954, and also through his efforts encouraged a lot of other great jazz festivals to get started, including the New Orleans Festival. So we're one of an edition of the Newport's All Stars is playing for a concert down there, and it'll be a lot of fun.
So you're
Playing,
going to New Orleans.
yeah,
Yeah, okay. I thought you said Newport, but he started the Newport Jazz
yeah, it's
Festival.
called the Newport Jazz Festival All Stars because he started the Newport Festival
Right.
back in '54, and over the years, George, in addition to being a great festival promoter and businessman, loved to play the piano, and over the years always had like a little all-star group traveling. Starting back in the '50s with people like Ruby Braff and Irby Green and Pee Wee Russell, and in the '80s with Warren Vacher and Scott Hamilton, and over the last 20 years, he still kept putting together groups for tours and gigs and stuff. So the most recent addition, at least for the last 10 years, was Randy Brecker on trumpet and Lou Tabakin on saxophone. We did a couple of long tours with Cedar Walden on piano, which was just heaven. And Peter Washington on bass, Lewis Nash on drums, and a great lady of the saxophone and clarinet, Anat Cohen, will be there too. So I'm looking forward to a nice reunion and some exciting music.
It's too bad you can't find any A-listers to play with.
Well, you have to make do with what you have sometime.
Wow, what a lineup that is. Are you recording it all these days or anything going on that front?
Nothing going on much right now. No recording projects on my own at the moment.
Hmm.
In October, I'll be going to Germany for a couple weeks to play with some guys over there. I used to have a ongoing partnership with a great German seven-string guitar player, Helmut Nieberle, and
Hmm.
we made a couple recordings together in Germany together. And I used to go over there almost annually for tours with him. He passed away this last, well, almost 2 years ago. But some friends, musicians that played with him, were organizing a little tour in his memory, and also we're going to do a recording of his music and a lot of tunes they used to play. So that's the most recording I've scheduled right now.
Well, that's nothing, to be sneezed at for sure. So, just for fun, people, you play seven string guitar and have forever. You were one of the early guys. You play with George, obviously George Van Epps. There's a video of you on YouTube. You're playing an old Epiphone Howard Roberts, it looks like,
That's
and
right.
and George is playing his Gretsch seven string.
Yep.
And the next thing I know, you're playing a seven string. So apparently George had an effect on you.
He did. I knew about George even from the early days when I first started playing jazz guitar when I was a teenager. I'd heard mellow guitar, his classic
Hmm.
recording, and was fascinated by it, and he would try to pick little bits and pieces off of it. But I was never motivated to start playing the seven string for a long time. I mean, I would even pick up other people's seven strings sometimes and say, yeah, maybe not. It feels a little cumbersome and awkward. Bucky Fitzgerald used to hand me his guitar. Hey, play this here, check it out. And I would, that's good, but something about when I finally had the chance to sit down with George and record with him in the studio and just watch him face to face in action and see what he was able to do with that thing. Somehow it made it click for me in 1991. So that's when I realized that it did make sense for me. And I was starting to look for ways to play fuller harmony on the guitar and missing some bass notes on the guitar. So that year, Bob Benedetto made my first seven string for me, and I haven't looked back since then.
It's really funny. George's playing is so effortless. It just doesn't break a sweat. and,
Oh,
and it's so elegant. What an elegant spirit that guy had.
he
And it,
was also one of the, I like to say, is one of the most unselfish, unegotistic musicians I ever met. I mean, he plays things that people are still trying to emulate or still trying to recreate, but he never did anything to say, "Here I am, look at me. Here I'm going to
right.
play this flashy lick. I'm going to, I'm burning here." He just all in the service of the music, or in the support of another musician he was accompanying. It was really amazing to see. The one time after I'd made the recordings with him in 1991, a couple years ago afterwards, I was able to get him to come to England with me for 2.5 weeks to play some gigs, like 2 weeks of gigs together there. And it's the first time probably in years that he'd actually performed every night with a guitar. I mean, I'd played a couple of concerts with him before in the recordings, and he's playing very elegantly and very gently and beautifully. About the third night of our tour over there, all of a sudden his chops kicked in. You know what it's like to play every night as opposed to just once every 2 weeks. And he was playing just, again, even more amazing things. It was scary. I just kind of sat back and just watched it in awe for the next 2 weeks. It's really,
Wow.
really a wonderful thing to experience.
So that was it. I mean, the seven string came to you because, like a lot of people, you wanted to extend out the harmony. You weren't looking to replace the bass player, as they say.
No, no, I wasn't.
No, I know that.
Of course
It's
not. No, it just made the harmony more complete and gave me a little extra range. Even there's so many ways to approach the seven string, whether it's the full multi-voice way of George's playing, or someone like Ron Eschte out in California, who's one of the masters of the seven string, or just being able to have access to the notes when you need them. It's not like I'm always playing seven string chords or even five string chords. I'm just using the notes when I want them to refer to a bass note and flesh out the harmony, or be able to play a tenth on the bottom of the chord instead of a third.
do you are you tuned to A or to B?
To A.
To A. Okay.
That's what George used. I know a lot of people also use the B. In the rock world, people use the B, and in Brazil, where they've had a tradition of seven string since the 1920s or 30s. They use a low C
Oh, wow.
traditionally. Yeah.
Okay.
It's,
So you've been around. I mean, you're not that old. I mean, not to make you
thanks
sound
for
old, but
saying that.
you just started young. Well, you're several years younger than me, and you've been around this scene for a long time at a very, very, very high level. Um, can you comment a little bit about what you've experienced, what you've seen over the years of the progression of this thing we call jazz guitar?
Yeah, well, there's so many aspects to it. You know, I was
Oh,
very lucky. I grew up in California
mm-hmm.
and got to know some musicians out there. I studied initially through an amazing lucky break. I studied initially with Jimmy Weibel, and
Right,
uh, and then he encouraged me to check out one of Howard Roberts' seminars, a weekend seminar. I got to know Howard Roberts and started going to these little weekly small group classes he had, which evolved into him starting his Guitar Institute,
right,
known as Musicians Institute. And through that, you know, there were a lot of great guitar players in Southern California then. Herb Ellis was playing regularly, Mundell Lowe, oh, so many people. Through that, I got to know a lot of the local musicians, and then playing. One of the things that really set high standards for my playing and put everything together is I was heard by a friend of Red Norvo who asked me to join Red Norvo for a trio gig in Atlantic City for a
mm,
summer of 1979. Red is someone who'd been through several generations of jazz history already. He'd started
mm-hmm.
in the early 30s, and you know, along with making some of Charlie Parker's first recordings and of course the trio recordings with Tal Farlow and so many things. I initially met him at his house, got together, played a few tunes. That's great, you know. He would go to Atlantic City, the Resorts International, would be playing, you know, for a few hours a day. And then I got in the gig with him, and he, I remember the first tune we were playing, even just some simple tune like All of Me. And I'm playing along and I'm kind of supporting him. And then I start playing my solo and I'm playing all this great stuff. I think I'm just smoking. And he's kind of looking at me like, you know, or the bass player. And and then,
Kids.
yeah, these kids, you know, and and then he said, now when the bass player is playing, play like rhythm guitar. So I'm going, dum, 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 dum. And he looks like over me again, kind of with a look of disgust, and takes all four mallets and goes, bum, 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 just doing an imitation of the bad, heavy-handed rhythm I'm playing.
Right.
You know, it just instantly, and this we're playing in a dining room for a bunch of diners. It's not like we're a concert, but he just set such high standards right away. I felt, and I started talking and trying to talk. Well, Red, tell me what I need to do. And well, you know, you're playing endlessly. You're not taking any breaths. You're just playing a bunch of meaningless notes, and you're playing heavy rhythm. And when you play rhythm, you're not supposed to play motion. You're supposed to play rhythm. And anyhow, I just really started paying attention to what he had to say. These are things that even the great teachers I met in California would never tell me these things. These are coming from someone who'd had, again, you know, 50 years of experience performing and playing. So I appreciated someone being willing to tell me, you know, to kick my ass and tell me what I should be doing. And I really put together so much in that summer of 3 months of playing 5 nights a week with Red that
Mm-hmm.
it just brought everything together and set such high levels for performance that it really changed my musical life, you know. And
It's
I've been lucky to meet a few people like that over the years. A few years later, I was in New York playing some gigs. I met a trumpet player named Ruby Braff, who also wasn't afraid to tell you what he thought and give less than gentle suggestions. So it was a whole different level of both technical and just aesthetic consideration. I hope this makes sense of what I'm
No, it
saying.
may absolutely makes sense. You know, it's funny. It's okay. It was okay to do that back then. Today, I think they would call you, you know, every name in the book. You know, he's an asshole. He's a this.
That's
He's a
right.
that. This guy's he's
Yeah.
impossible to work with. And but back in those days, you know, if you were out of line on the bandstand, quote unquote, you know, you got told. Just
It's a different attitude and different world.
it's the D word. Discipline.
Discipline, yes,
Yes,
discipline,
discipline.
and high standards,
High standards, right? Yeah, it's
and no bullshit.
very, very, very well put. So, in working with all those guys, like, did it occur to you what you were experiencing when you were working with, the likes of, when you were around Joe Pass and Herb and all these guys, that that the rest of us just kind of, we read about him in Guitar Player magazine. That's the only. And you were a young guy. You were like 20 something years old at the time, right?
Yes.
So did it occur to you that, wow, I'm in with these monsters of the Midway, or
Of course, it occurred to me. I felt incredibly fortunate, incredibly lucky, and tried to take advantage of every moment and appreciate every moment and get as much as I could from them. Absolutely. I mean, it was some amazing opportunities to have a connection with the history of both guitar and jazz and the experience. So yes.
Looking back at your experiences of working with the best of the best, and truly the guys at the mountains of this thing, what gives you that self-actualization feeling, like this is a good thing that I'm doing here? Is it how would you answer that question? What gets you off today? What do you really enjoy, and what do you really appreciate about your music and what you're doing when you play?
I appreciate getting together with people that I've played with a little bit before or not playing with, and having everybody being in the moment and making music and listening. I've had even, things are starting to pick up here again in Phoenix. I had a couple of recent gigs in town with like a great bass player and drummer that it really felt, again, like everybody was hooking up and making good music and exciting for both the band and the audience. So that's what really just being on the bandstand and making music together. That's what gets me off.
What kind of tunes are you playing? Like if someone was to call you and say, "Listen, we want to do the Howard Alden trio to come and play at our event," or whatever it is, what are there? Where would you draw from for the tunes that you would?
Well, I draw from a lot of things. Again, I've enjoyed playing a wide span of music. I like playing a lot of more traditional jazz, more pre-bop, even pre-swing, and I've always liked some of the main. Since the 20s, I've been fascinated with like Thelonious Monk's music or Duke Ellington's music. So I usually try to pick a variety of things out of that, whether it's some classic songs by Cole Porter that I like, whether it's a Monk tune or two, whether it's a tune by one of the guitar players I admire, whether it's Joe Pass or Django Reinhardt. I always try to include a couple of George Van Eps's pieces just to show what he brought to the 7-string guitar. So it's really, and also for years I've been fascinated by the traditional Brazilian music called choro. So I always try to include one or two of those just because it's my personal passion. And even if I find people that aren't that familiar with the style, I have the music and I introduce them to it.
You don't happen to have a guitar handy there, do you?
I do. I happen to have one right here.
Well, I always ask people to play me something that this is about the Howard Alden approach.
Oh gosh.
Man, listen to that. Oh my God.
Can you hear it?
Oh, can I hear it? Yeah, I've got headphones on, so that low end is coming through great. And that's a Benedetto, of course.
This is a relatively new Benedetto that was just made for me, again, like about 2 months before, like at the end of 19. That shows where I am. 2019.
Right.
Superb guitar, and I took it on one little tour up to Northern California with a violin player. I took it to Brazil for a week, and then came home, and everything stopped for 2 years. So it stayed at home and played it. But it's
sounds beautiful.
Specifications that I'd looked for over the years, and I love it playing it. I guess guess I think he calls it this 16B with
Oh yeah.
oh here's this is an old Duke Ellington tune called
Yeah.
Ultra Swing.
Ooh. Ooh. Brilliant.
It's
Just
early, sorry.
just brilliant though. Thank you for doing that. Da 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 da. That's a great line that you threw in there. I went, oh man. Has anybody ever told you that I think that your baby finger on your left hand is Gumby?
You know, a few people have said that. Jack Wilkins had told me that a few times too. It's
I can't believe how far out you could stretch that baby finger. It was like
well,
uncanny.
I just started reaching for things when I was very young, and it
Bring your guitar up a little bit because we can't. There you go. Now we can see it. Man, it's uncanny how far you can stretch that baby finger out. You know, and irrespective of the rest of like yeah.
well, I just kind of got used to using it a lot. I even though I love Django Reinhardt, I still believe in using the fourth finger,
Oh
uh,
yeah.
and I've made a point of always developing it over the years, and somehow it just got used to reaching out there. So one year, years ago, I looked and I realized that it's got another
It's about a half inch longer.
about a chord 2/3 maybe.
Yeah, it's like wow. I was going something's up with that finger. That's really great. Hey, that's fantastic, man. Thank you for doing that.
Oh, you're welcome.
Really appreciate it. Is there anything you'd like to leave our audience with? Anything? Any words of wisdom or?
As far as words of wisdom, you know, one thing that struck me even a few years ago, I was doing a guitar workshop in Germany, and the participants, the first day, people were talking, saying, well, everybody go ahead and introduce yourself and play something. Tell me. So people were saying, yes, well, I'm so and so, and I've been playing for a while, and I play mostly folk and jazz. I'm sorry. and we play a little something, and then someone else says, "Yes, I really want to play jazz, but I've played mostly folk music." And finally I said, "Wait a minute. What are you talking about? Jazz is folk music, you know.
It's gonna
People
say.
more people in the world are playing All the Things You Are right now probably than ever played Hang Down Your Head, Tom Dooley. At least in my experience." And then they all
That's
said, "Oh,
brilliant.
jazz is folk music." Yeah, right. And then someone else says, "Oh, I'd like to play something I learned." And he starts playing ba 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 ba, and everybody starts singing along. Da 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 da. I said, "See, that's folk music. You guys all know that tune. That's a tune that you've been playing and living for 60 years, and it's a melody. It's familiar." Well, anyhow, I guess the point I'm saying is the music you like and you live with, play that on your instrument and make it your own and enjoy it. And there's so many things to be created from your common knowledge and your background, and don't feel that you have to artificially create something from some mathematical formulas or scale books or pattern books. Draw upon what you've heard and what you know, and make that part of your existence.
I got to tell you, that is some of the best advice I've heard from anybody. So,
Really?
yeah, no, that was incredible. Listen, I appreciate it so much. Howard, thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it. So, Bob Baker from Jazz Guitar Today, in gratitude to Howard Alden for joining us. Thank you very much, Howard. See you later now.
You're welcome.
Good luck down in New Orleans, by the way. Have fun.
Thank you.
All right.
I will.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.